You should be saving for the future, but savings accounts suck, and investing can be scary. We combine the ease of savings with the real returns of investing. We call it Save Vesting, and it's only available in our new app, Stairs. Stairs offers 4 to 6% returns, no fees, and you can withdraw anytime. Do your future a favor. Visit stairsapp.com today.
Welcome to Magic Without Fears, Hermetic Podcast. I'm your host, Frater RC. For more and exclusive episodes, visit magicwithoutfears.com. Thank you for your support.
Jeff Contreras is back for round 2, and welcome.
Thank you very much, RC. I appreciate it.
Cool. You got my name right that time. Awesome. So as much, of course, I was so excited to have you back on the podcast, but you have a reason other than our mutual love for each other, and that reason is a bookie wookie.
Yeah, I do. I have a book coming out, my first book ever. You know, I never really thought that I would write a book. So many of my colleagues, you know, are taking care of that. And so I didn't think I'd have anything to write about. I'll write about everything. But this issue just kind of fell into my lap, and I ended up just making a series of notes for a friend, and before I know it, I had a book.
Wow. Yeah, what I think is interesting about it is that you see a lot of published material, of course, these days, and since the 90s New Age, that are eclectic and grabbing things from all over the place and throwing them together. But most of the time that people do things like that, there's very little cohesion, very little actual familiarity with any of the various topics that people are compiling and putting into a book. But what you've done, we have with your book, because I've spent several hours with it, though not read every word, but I've spent several hours enjoying it very much. And it's the eclectic and the full spectrum of a variety of techniques and ideas, but brought together by someone who's been living and practicing those techniques and ideas for many, many decades, and put together with care and attention with really, it seems like a real question of what will actually benefit the person reading this book, and how can these things be laid out in a way that could benefit almost anyone. And I see you in that book introducing very esoteric things in ways that are quite comprehensible to the non-esotericist even, or someone just interested in some forms of spirituality and magic.
Yeah, you know, the book is called Hacking the Human Experience, and that's basically what it is. When you're done doing the great work, you meet so many people, you know, that come into your life, and they seem to have something wrong with them, and, you know, sometimes you can help them and sometimes you can't. And over the years, I've noticed, you know, there's, you know, quite a few things that always seem to work, and some things that don't, and the things you don't, you know, kind of toss aside, and the things that do, you kind of keep around. And not every one thing works for everybody, but, you know, you get a few things that do work, and, you know, you can have them try out 2, maybe 3 things, and something will stick. You know, it's so hard to change who you are. I mean, it's, you know, our personality is hardwired into our code, basically, and it really is difficult to change. And unless you do it by repetition, which is really one of the only ways up until, you know, the past 2 or 3 decades, you aren't going to change. But these techniques that I put together, along with basic stuff like prayer, and I did bring in a little New Age, from the manifestation world, that arena. When you work magic, you're familiar with manifestation, and so this kind of gives you the nuts and bolts behind it. And then I also added, Stoicism, which I think is a great philosophy. I think, more people should practice it because it's so, so good for you. And I really just throw the basics together. And like I said, I did this as a series of notes for a friend who was going to have to go on a 30-day rehab. And I wanted them to have some notes. That way they could do something each day, kind of help them along. And so the book is actually formatted like a 30-day, workbook. And I give you something to do or think about every day for 30 days. And at the end of that, you will have the tools that you need to basically change your personality or get rid of some bad habits or whatever it is that you want to do. And yeah, there's quite a bit of esotericism in there. I mean, I've got some really solid prayers from the Order Roquois. I mean, I would even introduce you how to find your HGA if you feel like doing that.
Yeah, that really stood out to me. I was surprised at how like when you introduced esoteric things specifically, you didn't just introduce like sort of entry level stuff. You just sort of brought in right away.
No banishing rituals in my book.
Yeah, you brought in the most potent things that you would think are crucial if someone maybe only had 30 days to get a slight intro to the most effective techniques and practices that can be used.
Yeah, I mean, I almost called the book Magic for Muggles, but I was kind of worried about using that word. I didn't want to get sued.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you remember when all those kids had the fan sites before adults realized what the internet was, not when Harry Potter came out, 2001 or whatever, that sort of era, they all these kids had these fan sites with, harrypotter.com and all these different things, and they all had the shit suit out of them, like until there was media stories. I don't know if you remember this, or people might not remember this, but it was really hilarious. Like this major corporation was suing these like preteens who knew how to reserve URLs, build websites, and build fan sites, and they were getting all these hardcore letters from lawyers being sued, and it's like, what? And they were like crying and stuff, until eventually the press got a hold of it, and people were like, oh, these are children, maybe we should go a little easy on them, let them keep a few of their fan sites and all of that, because J.K. Rowling's not a cruel person, it seems, or certainly they laid off after it got out who these people they were suing were. It wasn't like adults trying to make a buck. It was mostly kids who just liked Harry Potter. Oh, God. It was pretty funny, though. Corporation sues children for fan sites. That would have been a great name for the book. But I also like hacking the human experience.
Well, thanks. You are one of the few people that have actually, spent some time with the book. I know I think that's about 20 people. I think maybe 5 actually read it. People don't seem to read these days.
Oh, well, don't even get me started on that. I mean, I read so much.
I think it's kind of disconcerting, I mean, I do too. And, I have that, what I consider to be, an okay library at the house. And it's just like, wow, I'm actually ready for the EMP from the sun to come. That way I will have plenty to do, and for everybody else, I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, do you think everyone has realized in the last couple of years how much more vulnerable we are than we might have thought? Or do you think they haven't realized it? Because you guys got crazy snow in Austin last year that killed some people. So that's a reminder of vulnerability. Our power, our food shortages, all this sort of stuff, like, can just go away like that.
Yeah, it can. But I mean, I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't think hardly anybody's prepared. They say preppers make up like 4% of the population. That's not a lot.
Yeah, no. They turn the water off for the day, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, how do I live? If you live in a city, you don't have that many options. If I don't know. Well, we can be spiritually prepared, right?
Exactly. And that's what I try to be. And I really don't have a choice in the matter anymore.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started. There is the privilege to be in places like Canada or Texas, where you are, or other places where you still can, in theory, you can go out into nature and get a little piece of land and do your own thing. Unfortunately, Europeans don't really have that option so much, and so many people are just our fates are tied to our cities and our technology now, it feels like.
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, I just here recently moved out of the city, and I'm right off the suburbs now, on a nice piece of land. We got well water. We're in the valley, 14 acres, and it's great. The only thing about it is I don't get a cell signal there.
Oh, wow.
It's nice about 4 days out of the week, but there's 3 days out of the week where it's kind of a hassle.
Yeah. But you have internet, because that's how we're talking, right?
Nope, I sure don't. I'm sitting in the parking lot of a convenience store that's about 8 miles away from my house.
Oh, damn. Is that something you're gonna change down the road? Because
actually, we do have service coming in the next few months. We just have to be patient until then.
So you're gonna become a farmer or get some goats, or what's the plan?
I'm thinking of honeybees.
Honeybees, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, honeybees.
Yeah, we had some beehives where I was in California the other year, and it was pretty cool to walk past them every day and see them doing their thing and just realize, hey, they're just making honey. They're
I think the upkeep is, not that bad. They don't poop all over the place, and can't go wrong with a bee, really. And they produce honey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I would watch the contractor on the grounds take out the honey sometimes and just take some stuff out of it and enjoy it. He always was convinced he never needed to wear the bee suit, and every single time he got the shit stung out of him. Every single time. He's like, oh no, it's fine. And then he's like, I got a bunch of stings. It's like, dude.
Yeah, I think I would wear the suit.
But at the same time, sort of God bless him, right? Like, once upon a time, I'm sure that's just how you had to do it.
Wow.
Before whoever invented, yeah. I guess he likes that honey. So bees would be cool. Yeah. Yeah, because you're close. You're not far from Austin, so it makes sense that you could.
I'm not far at all.
You should have the internet and all that stuff. Well, thanks for taking the trouble to sit in a convenience store parking lot to do the podcast. That's flattering.
Yeah, I'm getting a few weird looks, but other than that, yeah, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, you're just making a international, drug deal with Canadians. That's all. Yeah, through a podcast using coded language.
Exactly, through a podcast. Yeah. Here's my Bitcoin address.
Oh God! Say hello to CSIS. Yeah. What in another thing that was interesting that's interesting about your book is that you come, like, as you and I met in the Golden Dawn in '97, of course,
right,
in Cali, for those who don't know, and so we've known each other a long time. But you have, in more recent years, gotten very serious and much more focused on Martinism and the Order Martinis Souverain. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Très bien.
Just really.
So you're drawing from both those traditions.
I fall in love with the Elu-Cohen system, and it's just amazing. It's as far as systems goes, it's basically unexplored.
Yeah. No matter how much I talk to people who are in it and have friends who've been in it, I still feel like I know nothing about it, and I think a lot of people sort of feel that way, which is really interesting. I mean, it mainly comes from the disconnect that there was between the occultists on the continent of France and Germany and such, and the stuff going on in England. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I tell you what, other than the numbering system, I think Martinism is just amazing. But I still can't get the numbering system down because, I don't know, I guess because I've spent so many years and decades, working the other Western mystery number system, that this one is just so foreign to me. It's just like,
So what do you mean by the Martinist numbering system?
But, Pascal, he did his own thing with the numbers. And if you've never seen it, I'll send you a sheet on it. I mean, the numbers, it's just weird. It's foreign to me, and because of that, I don't know. I just have an aversion to it. I don't know why.
Are these like in place of Kabbalistic gematria, or
exactly? Yes.
Okay.
In place of that. Yeah. So it's completely foreign, and to me, it makes no sense. But to others, if that's the first numbering system they've learned, it makes total sense to them. And it's just like, well, good on you. I don't get it.
Huh. Yeah, no, it's, I've never really looked into it. I stayed more on focused on the German.
I think it was one of those things where, Pascal, he didn't want to transmit the Kabbalah, he didn't want to break the rules. And so he's like, well, we need numbers. So here's a numbering system.
Oh, weird. He didn't want to divulge the secret mysteries of Kabbalah to the profane?
That's exactly.
Surprise! They were pretty much already well known, just not by Gentiles.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, it's like that reminds me of Crowley's famous statement. He took all these vows, was initiated, and then entrusted with the great eternal mystery of the Hebrew alphabet. It's like, yeah.
The OMS is really, they've got some amazing books coming out. I mean, we just had one, the 10 Lessons of Zion, come out, and then we have another one, the Secret Instructions for Ella Cohen Chiefs, and some amazing work coming from the people in the OMS, without a doubt.
Yeah. How many major Martinist orders would you say there are in the world?
Major? Maybe about 5, but there's probably hundreds of Martinist orders, so.
Yeah. No, I mean it like that, because there's probably hundreds of GD groups, right? But only, say, 5 or 6 major orders. So it's sort of parallel, I guess, to that.
Yeah. But I think, as far as the Eloquon goes, we have some scholars that have discovered some amazing things, and really, for the most part, I hate to say it like I'm going to say it, but there's really no other way to say it. They're all doing it wrong. There were some manuscript errors made early on that have continued to, promulgate throughout all the groups. And like, for instance, they're using this, like the 7th degree as the 4th degree, and they don't even know what the 4th degree is. And it's just like, there's a lot of the other higher degrees are just missing. They didn't even know they exist, but we found them. So they do exist. They're out there.
Wow. That's almost painfully reminiscent of the issues in the GD world in scholarship. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah, damn. It reminds me of, all the people claiming to use the AO Alpha and Omega initiations for all those years, but they can't show them to you because they're secret. And then Farrell releases the actual ones, and everyone's like, oh. Yeah. That's pretty funny. Well, when in doubt, just make it up, right? That's how the occult works.
Hey, there's a lot to be said about that. There really is. I mean,
I was joking.
You might be making it up, but, you put enough energy behind it, and it starts to mean something.
For sure. I was just actually today reading Frater Yechida's story about and reference to the fact that in the 5 books of mystery, the angels tell D that the table he makes is only to be used for 30 days. In fact, and apparently a lot of people overlook that. And Yechida then recounts the story of, I think it was one of his teachers, who, because of that, talked to the angels, and they described a slightly different table for him to make for his own personal working that was quite different, radically different from the traditional table. And the reason was because, hey, look, the angels only told Dee to use this for 30 days, and maybe that's because each practitioner is meant to be given their own table or something from the angels. And I thought that was quite an interesting point, and it's certainly apropos of what you're saying. About the
without a doubt,
sometimes, yeah. I mean, if some practitioners, like, I've been working this system for years, and they told me to make my own version for my working, it's like no one's ever going to fault that, right? If you try and change, if you try and publish it and say this is the true table that the angels have finally revealed to me, then it's like now we have a problem.
Exactly. Or this is the table the angels told me that you should use.
Yeah, Now we're in familiar territory, aren't we, Frater?
Oh yeah, dude. That's how you can always spot a fraud like that. Whenever the angels have the message for you that they didn't come directly to you, somebody else is trying to tell you that. Don't listen to them because they're full of shit.
Yeah. From
if
time
the
to time,
angels have a message for you, they'll get it to you. That's for sure. They know how.
Yeah, they've never, in my experience, been very incompetent.
Not at all.
Yeah, like it's crazy, almost sort of the things in the strange routes life will take, or circumstances in life will take sometimes, that seem so absurd or roundabout, but then you see the intention behind it, and you can see those mechanisms in motion to get you where you need to be, or to manifest what you're willing, and can be pretty far out.
Definitely.
The way these things come about, because sometimes, especially when working with these spiritual creatures, I mean, sometimes it seems like they have to do things in ways that don't make sense for us for them to occur, and that's one of the strangest things about it. But yeah, well, sort of exciting too, I guess.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was doing my Enochian work back around the turn of the century, I used the traditional table, and I had, I guess, for lack of a better word, tons of success. I mean, I found the angels very willing to talk, very eager. As a matter of fact, every time you make a connection, it seems like they've just been waiting for you. You know what I mean? It's just like, finally, you made it. We've been waiting for you. Here's like 3-4 gigs of information. Digest it all in 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, both with the deep purist method with the table and all the bells and whistles, and with the GD method, because we did both when I was in the Golden Dawn in 5-6. We did both. We actually practiced both of those methods. I didn't realize they were distinct methods actually at the time. I was too busy learning things I didn't know to worry about that, right? Plus, we didn't have nearly the literature out that we have today. And what does it matter when you're learning from hands-on people like, Ramses anyways, right? You're just,
Right.
show me how you do this so that it works. And it was phenomenally successful. Actually, one of the things that's interesting I've noticed in doing some of the experimenta without all the tools is quite telling. Like when me and another adept in Vancouver used to do full table Enochian stuff in the traditional sort of way. We might open with some GD style rituals or a watchtower or something like that, but mainly it was traditional, with the prayers and the calls. The ease with which we were able to get many hours of communication with all those tools, that's what sort of, when you remove like the table or the sigillum or replace it with the tablet, that's what I've noticed is sort of what fluctuates, like the clarity of communication or the speed at which you can establish a firm connection, or even the ability to maintain it. It's been very interesting to experiment with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but it does show you that really the most important tool to have when you do ritual is your mind. Because that really and truly, that's all you need to establish any connection. I mean, the tools will help, definitely, without a doubt. What you need is to have a sharp mind, and you need to meditate, because that's the best tool for your brain. And I can't stress that enough for anyone out there who's just wanting to make any type of connection. Meditate. The answers will always come through meditation.
Yeah, I also think one of the most important things about meditation is it's very hard to maybe it's not very hard, but the more you meditate, the much easier it is to distinguish your thoughts from sort of alien and foreign communications, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the only way you're really going to get to know yourself. And once you know yourself, you know what's not yourself, and then you can determine, okay, that this thought, this stream of thought is not coming from me or from the well I usually draw from. So let's explore it and see what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually one of the reasons I've started recommending automatic writing practices more and more these days to people, because that's sort of another side to meditation, and a very interesting way to develop that sort of image streaming flow state. But then you have the ability to look at it after and be aware of where your mind was filling in blanks versus where your mind was open to the communique. And
I think that somewhere along the line, channeling got a really bad rep in the occult world, and a lot of schools took it out of their curriculum. But there's a lot to be said for channeling, and I think it should be brought back in now that enough time has passed, because the practices there are phenomenal.
I mean, if you don't take channeling and scrying seriously, then you're essentially forced to be restricted to only operating with the goal of having full physical apparitions appear and speak with a physical voice.
And that is so rare.
If it wasn't, we'd probably have it on video by now.
Exactly.
Someone would have filmed it, because all these people who you see on these grimoires, purist and expertise groups on Facebook, tons of the amount that claim to do that is a large number of people who claim to, oh no, we don't do scrying. We only go for not just physical appearance, full spectral manifestation in a physical way. And often, I hear people say, just like John King and Julio Cesar Odi do. And I think there's a problem with this. And I see a lot of people noticing that problem with this idea that it's not valid communication if it comes through our consciousness. There's a new movement going back towards this almost supernaturalist view of these beings as needing to penetrate and break through our reality in a shocking and very unnatural way, I would say. Otherwise, declared invalid. And I'm not sure if it's upstarts who are leading this sort of fantasist charge, or if it's or what's really going on. I'm not sure what's going on.
I think part of it has to do with our fascination and the dogmatic view of the scientific method.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The scientific method has become basically, it's like a religion these days. And unless you do it the way that other people say you must do it, then they consider it invalid. But I'd say channeling is taking the small steps to getting to the full apparition.
Sure.
It's like knocking on the door and then making a telephone call and then meeting for coffee and then finally, oh, you'll come to my house. Hey, you know what I mean?
I think
the baby steps that you need to take in order to walk.
Well, could you imagine your buddy calling you up and saying, or texting, being like, yo, can we talk on the phone for a minute? It's like, sorry, I only do person-to-person, in-person conversations now.
Yeah, that's so weird to me.
you might stop calling that dude. You might stop texting them, and maybe the spirits might stop working with you as well if the way that is easiest for them to communicate with you isn't good enough, and you need them to show up at your door physically.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like, I've been trying to talk to you for years, and you won't pay attention to me. And now you just want me to show up? Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, Skinner mentions the amount of people who are looking for too large a sign of the spirit's presence. Like, they're looking for too much of a sign and ignoring the actual sign of the spirit's presence, which is sort of insulting to the spirit, right? It's like, yo, these are known signs that I'm here, and anyone who's slightly clairsentient, worth even a tiny bit, should be able to feel it. I mean, there's so many physical tells when spirits actually show up. It's so overwhelming most of the time it's hard to imagine for people like us. I'm sure that how people could be unclear about that. But for those who are unclear about spirits actually showing up and whether they're there or not, I mean, yeah, I think it's Adley Nichols who pointed out that there's actually even a tradition in the grimoires. Is that a guy, Adley Nichols? Am I saying that name? Is that's real?
I'm learning something right now.
Anyway, he points out, I saw him point out that there's actually a tradition amongst the grimoires of warning magicians from demanding too much from the spirits in terms of how the degree to which they appear, and that if you spend too much time, so there's a tradition in the grimoires going back over 1,000 years, where it's quite well known by them that if you spend too much of the time trying to get the spirit to manifest better and better, you just might exhaust it and yourself or the whole operation in the process, and then you're just constantly, all you're doing in all your evocations is just trying to get some sort of manifestation, and it's just I think ultimately it's sort of superficial in your it speaks poorly of your intentions and convictions, I think.
And another thing about it is that, lots of the spirits they're different. And the ways they communicate with you are different. And some people might not, see into the astral very well. Other people might not hear very well. Other people just might not feel their presence. But all the spirits, they will contact you the best way they can. And if you don't know yourself, if you don't have a firm grasp over what you are and where your thoughts come from and how all of that works, you are not going to be able to tell the difference between a spirit contacting you and you just having an itch, or you hearing something faintly that just might not be there, or if you see some shadows over in the distance, but you're just going to dismiss it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Too many people these days are not comfortable with themselves.
I mean, that could almost be the line of the times, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I meet so many non-practicing people who are lost when they are alone. They don't know what to do, especially if you take the phone away from them. They don't know how to function.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, honestly, today I've not actually even looked at my phone once, other than to send you the Zoom link, and or even seen if I've missed calls or have messages or anything. And when people find that out, because sometimes people are like, "Hey, man, I didn't hear from you at all yesterday." I'm like, "Well, I didn't look at my phone yesterday." And they can't believe it. It's like, if I'm constantly distracted, it's the greatest enemy of any writer or maybe any person, period, is constant distraction, right? So like, you got to have your notifications turned off. You got to take these sort of measures if you want to be able to actually get through a book in a day. It's just that simple, let alone in the quiet time between necessary survival activities and ablutions. If you want to find those silent spaces to talk to yourself or other things, or just feel alive and be in that silent space of living, right? You're not going to do it if you've got things beeping all the time and demanding, that you heart back the heart that someone hearted you. right? It's like, that's lovely and all. It's cool that we can do that, but we've definitely seems to let it take control of us in a weird way.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I went through a book in just a day. That's quite a feat there you've got.
Oh yeah, no, I guess I've been, we're still locked down, right? I'm not allowed to go to a restaurant. I can't go. I can't work in this country legally. So if you're there you go. 2 years of lockdown will help you read. If
fortunately here in Texas, it's pretty much like normal. Back to normal. It's not the new normal. It's the old normal.
Yeah. It's Texas is sort of a outlier in the world right now.
Yeah, we'd like to be that way.
Hey man, France. France was actually warning us about this a long time ago. When I was there in Toulouse and Paris in 2019. They had the riots going on every weekend, and I ended up talking to a lot of other musicians and punk kids who were protesters and medical doctors, because I spent some time in a hospital there. And I was like, because everyone in North America were hearing that they were protesting for these years and burning down like the Champs Elysees and all these other beautiful places every weekend in an organized fashion over gas prices. And that was the news in North America. And it was shocking to be there. And I was like, well, this is about gas, right? And everyone was like, what are you saying? What? I was like, isn't it? That's what we're told in North America. They're like, no, none of this has to do with gas. They're like, this has to do with inequality and totalitarian rulership that's increasing in France. And the people are pissed off about how they were being treated. Like, the French have a history of revolting against these sort of authoritarian, corrupt leaders. And they were protesting, and I heard today even someone mentioned like, oh, well, they're all protesting. It's like, no, they've been protesting this point long before we even realized it was a problem on a global scale. And that was a big eye-opener.
Kind of like a thing here in America. We like to rag on the French. And,
yeah, I know. Well, who doesn't?
But I tell you what, the French know how to protest. I will give them that. They protest like nobody's business. And we could learn a lot from the French when it comes to protesting.
Yeah, they had their own special medical people in orange vests and all of these things. But like in the month that I was there, in one town alone, the cops knocked out over 22 eyeballs from people by hitting them on the heads.
Damn.
Yeah. There's like an eyeball.
There's got to be a special technique, dude. You don't just do that by accident.
Nightstick to the side of the head, yeah, disables the person, and sometimes they die.
Wow.
Yeah, these organized protests. I mean, that's why every city in France was like had these big signs saying like, "Do not go downtown on the weekend."
Crazy.
So on the weekends, I did not go to city centers and just stayed, on the other areas, and because it was dangerous, and to realize that they basically they were on to some global issues that we all hadn't clued into yet, that's why they're still protesting, because nothing's really changed. It's just gotten worse.
I mean, I know here in Austin, we had the protests, that were trying to start up, and until that one guy with a rifle in the street got shot by the driver, and then that pretty much quelled everything. And I don't know. I guess it's fortunate, but things are pretty much normal here. I haven't seen sign of anything like that. I can't, actually, it's been about 4 days since I saw somebody wearing a mask.
Wow. Here we still have people wearing masks alone in their car, and you see these really fit guys on bikes doing like their, fit guy bicycling, not normal bicycling, but the fit guy bicycling, like wearing double masks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like that's the norm that I've noticed. Like when I see someone really fit biking, usually have at least a mask on, if not two.
That's so bad for your body. You're not getting any oxygen.
Well, and then in the evenings they can go out, because they're vaxxed probably, to a club and make out with a bunch of people and not worry about COVID because they're vaxxed. The irony is that's how it's still transmitting, because it doesn't stop it at all. Well, it does a bit. It does. Listen to your doctors, folks. Which,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. I do not give out medical advice, but I can tell you got COVID is full of shit. You know, I can tell because look at the homeless population.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if COVID was a real thing, the homeless, they'd be wiped out.
You would think so. Maybe there's some unknown immunity provided by crack or heroin.
Or sunlight.
Or sunlight and exercise, because that's all they do is walk around in the sun all day looking for, socks. Yeah, the biggest crisis among homeless people in Vancouver to this day in my whole life has been they need socks. Like, we just can't even get them enough socks. And so, hey, and they're not worried about COVID when they don't have socks, I guess.
I'll tell you what, I could use a few more pairs of socks myself. So.
Hey, socks are awesome. Whoever invented socks, big points.
No doubt. I think that guy metal.
Yeah. Is there an evocational system in Martinism?
Oh, well, not in Martinism per se, but in the Elohim there are.
What's it like? How's it compared to other systems of evocation?
It is very much like the traditional grimoire system. I mean, lots of candles, lots of incense, lots of prayer, robes, the whole 9 yards, really. I mean, it's truly, you know, what you think of when you think of magic. And the angels that they contact, you know, the angels, I mean, there might be a few in the 2400 registry there that, you know, you might have heard of, but other than I'd say maybe 2 dozen tops of 2400, none of these angels I've ever heard of. And they are unique? Very
like to Martinism?
I don't know for sure if they're unique, you know, because I have not explored every, you know, system. But I've never come across them, and I tell you what, they are easy to contact, and they are chock full of great information.
That's another thing people should remember when communicating with angels and spiritual creatures, right? Like, whether you think it's your own mind being inspired to provide this information, or the being communicating that information, or the being inspiring your own mind to communicate certain ideas to you, the basis for judgment really is still on the quality of the information, right?
Exactly.
Less on more on that than the quality of the communication. Maybe if people spent less time worrying about the quality of the communication and worrying about the quality of the information, that would, because you hear about grimoire practitioners who are really bad psychically, can't really find any form of communication and all these things. So will they just go through the motions and bind the spirit to a purpose? But why do they keep doing these things, even though they're so poor at communicating or getting a manifestation or anything like that? Because when they bind them for the purpose, it seems to work. So they keep doing it, even though that's really all they can do. And that's very interesting to me, right? Because if you can make that work, then it will show you that it's something that can be built on incrementally, and that if they can do this thing, then obviously the communication can still happen. You just sort of might have to do a bit more work on yourself to meet them halfway, or maybe do more precautions, like more days of fasting. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't like fasting. You know, I have to do it sometimes. I just don't like it. Can't even do the keto thing because 16 hours seems too long for me. Yeah.
It's you know, I frequently in the works I've done, operations I've done this year, have I've done some experiments with where I did 3 days of fasting prior to the operation with the other people, and I did ones where I didn't. I did some Nokian operations where I didn't eat the day of the operation until the operation at 5 p.m. And then ones when I did, and I was really interested in actually just really getting to know myself and compare the differences it made. And one thing I noticed, just really plain as day, was the fasting the day of, leading up to the operation, made the communication much clearer. The results was clearer. It was easier. It was smooth.
I'm aware that there's a vast number of angels and other beings that I probably will never be able to contact because I don't do that. Fortunately, so? I kind of do. I do think, there is something to be said about all that. But fortunately, there are endless amounts of non-corporeal beings out there that you can make contact with when you don't as well. So, I mean, maybe I will, never really make great connections with that one class of angels that, just need you to do the things a certain way. But there's enough angels that, are just happy to be talked to, that I'll spend my time with those for right now.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like one of my buddies here in Vancouver is, he's a very devotional Norse practitioner. He doesn't ever do work with other people really, but he, has his altar and worships, Odin and stuff like that. And when he does his magical operations, I mean, they involve him making his own mead. They involve him roasting some animal, setting a plate and sharing a meal basically with his gods. And some spirits are, want you to be pure and chaste and not have, done anything sinful in 3 or 9 or 14 days. And some gods and spirits want a feast and might want a plate of pork and a horn of mead. And some beings probably even want ganja and tobacco and rum. So that's something worth considering. Though it's interesting to me that you still feel that, some beings don't like that and would rather communicate with a purified person, sort of.
Yeah, I'll give an angel three shots. You know what I mean? I'll do an invocation three times, and if I'm not getting anything, I'll move on to the next one.
Well, that's also, I mean, the grimoire tradition apparently attests to the fact that, different people are different spirits will want to communicate more with different people. And
exactly.
it's not about doing
the spirits are so 72. Much like people, and just like people, there's some people you want to hang out with and some people that you'd rather not spend any time with at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just normal. I think I'm very fortunate that, I have the ability to go astral, and every time I do, and anytime I see something, I always move towards it, go towards it. I talk to it, and if they don't want to talk to you, they will let you know, and they'll just get out of there. And it's really simple. So I mean, a lot of people when they go astral, they'll see a bunch of things, and I'll say, well, did you go talk to it? Did you approach it? And they'll go, no, I was just looking at it. It's like if they wanted to talk to me, I figured they'd come to me. I go, no, you're being dumb. Go up to them. Go up to them and talk to them.
Interact with the environment. It's crucial.
It is very crucial. I mean, otherwise, you're just a spectator, and you're not going to get any information like that.
It's like when you go to Tatua realms, where we vibrate the Hebrew divine names after you're in the Tatua realm, not before. Whereas, like if you're scrying a sigil, you might vibrate the hierarchy of names and then scry the sigil. But in the Tatua realms, we use the visual image. It reverses in our retina, and then we enlarge it. We go in, right? And then in that realm, once you are in the realm and it looks like the appropriate realm, then you vibrate the divine names, make sure the realm reacts appropriately to the divine names. But also those divine names are what activate the realm. And then you can start interacting with it. Yeah, it's an interesting point in that system.
And I think another thing that a lot of people, probably don't take into effect is, their dreams after they do an invocation. For the next, when you do an invocation for the next 3 or 4 days, really pay attention to your dreams, because they could be trying to communicate with you through your dreams. And if you're not keeping a dream journal, I don't even know why you're doing the great work, because I mean, it's very, very important. You get a lot of information in your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to like not smoke weed for like 30 days to remember my dreams.
Wow. And, you know, I can't smoke weed anymore these days. It's way too strong. I mean, I'm serious. It's just like, I mean, even like, you know, just like a half a hit from one of those vape pens, then it's just like, God dang, it's crazy. I mean, they need to make weed for like old timers like me that are just like, you know, just have like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12% THC. Because anything over 20%, and forget it. That's just too much for me.
Well, we have all these lovely government menus now, so they tell you the percent at everyone and all of that stuff.
I know, but they're always so high, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think you can find some weaker weed if you needed to.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'll just stick to the CBD.
Yeah, why not? Hemp. Yeah. So, yeah.
Get all the benefits and none of the mindful distractions.
Yeah.
The only thing that weed ever really did for me is really helped me regulate my breathing. It helped me focus on my breathing, but it elevated my heart rate so much that I couldn't have any real good meditations, it seemed. We never I never really benefited from it as far as magical work goes.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that I have. It makes concentration harder, and concentration is so crucial that bothers me. I think for some people, like especially people who might be dealing with certain things, then we might help free the mind up to focus a bit more. But it's never done that for me. Certainly not like mushrooms does.
There's a big problem with concentration in general. You know, when you're a kid and when you're young, you know, people are always telling you to concentrate, but they don't tell you how to concentrate. They just tell you to concentrate, and you're expected to know it, like out of the womb.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. You have to learn how to concentrate. And, you know, that takes, you know, will and mindfulness and paying attention. There's a lot of things that go into being able to concentrate. You just can't say, "Oh, I'm going to concentrate now," and you know, hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean that's where both, you know, the simplest meditations, like from either the Golden Dawn Meditation 1 or Franz Barden's practices, were such a revelation for me, because even though I had done a lot of transcendental meditating as a kid, when I discovered those guys, it was like these different techniques that if you did them separately had the cumulative result of helping you concentrate. So it's like sometimes it's hard to do things by just doing that thing, but if you build up the different associated muscles or tools that you need to do that thing, all of a sudden it just works much more easily. So the combination of mindfulness, of watching your thoughts and letting them go, mixed with the separate technique of focusing on the single point, and then the final, you know, another technique of just being at one with everything. Between those three exercises, which are separate, by doing all of them, somehow the focus and concentration just became razor sharp.
Yeah,
it's like the sum total of those different sort of techniques, for me at least, is what led to me developing my focus at a young age, and learning how to, and understanding what all these adults were talking about but not able to do themselves.
You see that a lot in this practice. People will tell you what to do, but they don't really do it themselves.
That was one of the first things that rubbed me wrong about when I got into ceremonial magic and all of these things as a kid, and started leaving the Maharishi world of my upbringing, was the hostility from the TM practitioners was shocking to me. Like, that was when I realized that they don't, not only do they think, like, they just, how do I say it? It Well, it definitely felt like they thought that anything other than what they did was invalid or pathetic. And I'd never noticed
Right.
that sort of quality from these people before, as long as I was doing the same practices as them, right? And doing what they do. As soon as I deviated and started going to something else that I found a lot grander and more useful and just more expansive, to see that kind of hostility and the kind of cultiness in it, I was like, oh damn, like is this always how it's going to be in spiritual groups, that like as soon as you try and deviate from what they're doing or what their doctrine is, are they going to become all of a sudden start acting a little less spiritual towards you, and it's like it sort of seems that way.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it just kind of goes to show you that, no matter what arena you find yourself in, or what you do in life, there's always going to be people like that. And you just got to know how to deal with them or not let them get to you or bother you, and just stay focused on what your goal is at hand.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's something recently I've just seen in spades as I finally took some time to dive into some of the real groups on Facebook. As much as I can't stand Facebook, there's a lot of amazing, magicians and researchers doing a lot of amazing stuff in these groups and sharing it and talking about it, which is really phenomenal, and doing some deep dives into the sort of purist camps of Enochian and grimoires. It's shocking how like their hostility to people who don't do exactly what they do. Like in the Enochian purist camp, like they shit on the GD nonstop, and a lot of them are Elamites, which is to me so strange that they're so hostile towards the original techniques that they are still using, because a lot of the OTO and AA uses Golden Dawn techniques, often without understanding how they actually worked in the first place. But that's fine. That was more Crowley's fault than the current practitioner's fault. He didn't communicate well what they were actually about, either because he didn't know or because he wanted to make them his own anyway. And so it's really strange for me to see these, to see the double standard. So like, they're a purist. A lot of people are a purist when it comes to the things they want to be a purist about. And as soon as you encounter something that it should be done this way, if you're a purist and they don't, they have no problem with that, because they're just picking and choosing, cherry picking the things that they're purist about and the things that they're not.
And it just goes to show you that there are control freaks everywhere, and that's really all it's about. They just want you to do it their way, or and anything else is invalid. But what they forget is that the basic tenet of the universe is free will, and what works for you might not work for anybody else, but as long as it's working for you, keep doing it.
Amen. Yeah, I think we should have these groups that are rigorously staying on topic, whatever their topic is. I think that's good. But I do think that new up-and-coming magicians need to sort of have a broader hermeneutic appreciation of how interpretation functions in human life, especially when you're looking at the development of traditions, culture, and manuscripts, and what that actually is like. There's something to be gained from the academic understanding of the fact that these are codified and sort of static artifacts, these manuscripts, of something that was alive and changing. But our tendency is to look at things that are codified and see them as representatives of a static sort of Platonic reality that was always this way, rather than placing them correctly in the living tradition they're in. And academics like Sophie Page and stuff, she's great, have gone a long way to be like, hey, these guys were just using whatever they could use to get in touch with the spirits. After that, they pretty much discarded the grimoires and just worked with those spirits. And that was quite an interesting observation, I think, for her to emphasize to the occult community when she talked on Glitch Bottle. I think I met her in England the other year, but I can't remember. I met too many people.
And I tell you, that's basically a natural progression of doing the great work. I mean, it becomes very personalized in the later stages. And I mean, I think that's just, natural. all the things that you learn in the outer orders and even in the inner orders, it's just preparatory work to get you to where you can do it your way.
Mm-hmm.
And once you can, then keep doing it. And like I mentioned earlier, man, getting information, I don't know. I have a thirst, a real hunger for information, especially information that you can't find, on the internet or wherever. And these beings have it. And I mean, I'm loving it. I think it's great. And I think, they're definitely useful and they're like tools, and to not take advantage of that, I think you're missing out on a big part of life.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you let it, the universe will conspire in your favor, but you have to let it.
So that's a big point, both in the occult world and also in the New Age, New Thought sort of world. But there's a difference to how we both understand that idea, I think. Right? So what does letting the universe conspire to help you mean? How does that play out in your mind?
To me, it's like, it's like going to a restaurant. You know what you want. And, you read the menu, you find out, you think, oh, I want that. You tell the waiter your order. But then, a few minutes later, you think, oh, well, you keep thinking about it, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it, and then you want to change it up a little bit, and you call the waiter over, and you tell them how you want it changed. So then they have to send that back to the kitchen. And they might have started your order already, but now they have to start it again. And if you keep doing that, you're never going to eat your food. To me, that's manifestation. If you want something, you actually desire it, spend some time, think about it, try to manifest it, and then stop thinking about it. Because every time you think about it, after that, it's like you're changing the order. And the chef has to start all over again. And you'll never get what if you don't stop thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've recently had to emphasize that to some of my peeps after we've made done some talisman work. It's like, look, stop, don't think about it after. Like, really try and be silent in your mind around it. Let it do its thing and give it time and get your mind off of it. I mean, that is the idea of to keep silence. What's really interesting about the idea of to keep silence is Franz Hartmann points out that it's not about secrecy regarding your work. It's about keeping that silence in your life so that you can hear the divine voice, which is very much like if you create a talisman, that's a part of God. That's a divine voice manifested and charged to this thing. It's a little mini portal to a certain frequency. Let that frequency ring out, like the ending note of a song. Shut the fuck up. Let it ring out. Listen for it. And that idea of to keep silence goes back to what we were saying before with the constant distractions of our world these days, right? Like, if you don't give yourself space in your day for silence and to really listen and just be, you're probably working against yourself.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Magically, as well as just in terms of your basic mental well-being, having all these bings and boops going on and demanding our attention, scheduling out our whole day. Remember when we were growing up and there was sort of de rigueur to tell people that, the most successful people, they plan out every minute of their day. They do this, and a lot of time for not having a plan, but everything's structured. And it was, I remember thinking at the time, it seemed so telling of where we were at in our sort of stage of development as a species, because it didn't really make sense to me in terms of any kind of universal truth. It's like, this is where we're at when people are telling you to plan things, structure things, be successful. You have to get this, get that, get the house, get the dog, die. And if you do that well, you were a success. It's like, what does that even mean? Why is that
generation? Like? You're part of that generation where the parents had every minute of your day planned out. But that wasn't my experience at all. I was part of the generation that, you know, your parents would let you leave on your bike in the morning, and you just had to be home by dark. And
yeah, well, that was how it was for me. But I had an alternative sort of upbringing for sure. I'm aware that my experience of growing up was very different to most kids of my generation. But for me, that's how it was. Like, yeah, like if I was back by sunset, they considered that a win. If I wasn't, then, you know, they'd check on me eventually, I guess. But partly that's due to like divorce, you know. Yeah, good times. Yeah, good time. It was a different world back then.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, but there was still definitely this idea, even in that freedom, of like, you need to plan. Like, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? You need to plan these things, and that's how things will work out. But what I've found, of course, through living, is that is complete bullshit. Because the best laid plans
I rage against growing up. I will not grow up.
Well,
I see no value in it whatsoever.
It also just wasn't true. It's like you can't just plan out your life like it's some sort of a computer program, and then expect that is why things will go well. I mean, life is so fucking crazy. And if you don't, a much better skill than planning is learning to adapt.
Oh, definitely.
I'd say, like, yeah,
because things will happen that were never part of your plan.
Yeah, like what if the government says that a percentage of your country isn't allowed to go to work? Where's all your plans now, motherfucker?
Exactly.
You know, you got to adapt. You got to figure out a way to survive now that you live in tyranny. And we have no playbook for that. Like, that's why I think Canadians are so stunned right now. Similarly to Australians, who I think they're opened up now, but they've been in a state of shock. It seems like for a year. Like, wait, what's just happened? They were even given an alcohol limit and arrested if they went over it each day. Like,
that's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. If they found out you'd had more than 6 beer delivered to your house, cops would show up and arrest you or beat you or do whatever they wanted. And there's lots of videos of this out online of people being assaulted in their homes because they ordered too much booze and stuff.
I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what happens when you let the government take away your guns.
You know, I've been hearing this from my beloved friends like yourself since '97 when we met, and coming from the Canadian world of anti-firearms and all that sort of thing, and hearing you guys talk of this sort of stuff back in the day, I just thought it was so absurd and silly. Now what do you think? Well, my aunt's been up at this creek protesting against them cutting down the old growth trees, right? I don't know if this made national or global news, really, but the cops, she's been arrested multiple times. She's 73, a little red-haired firecracker of a lady. And she used to be married to a Texan preacher, actually, back in the day. And I visited her in Missouri in 1990. But now she's back to being a West Coast BC liberal, protesting old growth trees cutting down for deforestation with all these other hippies who were like rolling around naked in the mud to deter the cops from arresting and attacking them. And what the cops did, because what the cops were doing was they were holding people down and opening their mouths and putting pepper spray in their mouths and down their pants, and then propping their legs up on boards and breaking them. And the cops were told to not wear ID and not bring badges or any identification with them. And they still aren't. They're still enforcing these laws and abusing these protesters. And there's no ID on them. And the reason was because, well, if we had ID, then you'd be able to, do things. And the whole country's okay with this.
Yeah, we took a wrong turn somewhere. I don't know where, but that's unacceptable.
In what world are we not all up in arms about our government telling cops to not wear ID so they can't get in trouble for the abusing citizens day in, day out. This has been going on nonstop for a while now.
Yeah, that is not my timeline.
Like, what the fuck? And no one has a problem with this, really. I mean, not really. If they did, it would stop. It would be stopped. But it's not being stopped because no one actually cares, except the few people protesting and the people funding them. You know?
I tell you what,
it's surreal.
One good thing to come out of these vaccine mandates is that people have found their balls. Because I'm very encouraged by how many people have just refused the mandate. Very encouraged. Yeah, there's still a lot of people doing it. You know, I say it's about, from my perspective, it looks like about 50-50.
I'm very surprised by how many people are protesting the mandates and are like, yeah, no, I have no problem with vaccines. I'm vaccinated, but we shouldn't have mandates. Like, they're standing up for the point of freedom, which is really hopeful because that is the key point, right? If this is mainly a test of compliance rather than anything else.
Exactly.
If they can get this noose over our necks right now, over the next year or two or whatever, I guess, or maybe some people say it's already happened. I don't think so, because if it had, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation and have thousands of people listen to it. There's no way. Like, if it was over, this wouldn't be possible. So it's not over, but damn, do they want that noose on it? Like, the idea of if we create a world where the government's just going to keep injecting shit in us for the rest of our lives, I don't want to have kids in that world.
Yeah,
that would be evil.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, the third shot is already here. It won't be long until the fourth shot, and then the fifth shot, and so on and so on. And yeah, that's just not for me. I mean, I've never really been a subscriber to the germ theory in general. I subscribe to the Terran theory, and then a lot of people don't know there's two contending theories about that. They think the germ theory, that's it, and there's no theory that opposes it. But there is. It's the Terran theory, and a lot of people should look into it because I think it's a lot more valid.
I don't know, brother. Sounds like fake news.
Well, you know how you can tell fake news?
It's on TV.
If it's on TV, if it's in a newspaper, if
it's got ads running on it.
Oh man, ads! That's a big tell right there.
Independent medical advice brought to you by Pfizer.
Or if Snopes talks about it, but pretty much whatever Snopes says, I do the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm actually pleased that you don't know what Snopes is.
No, I'm not. Like, I pretend to be sort of in touch with this stuff, but it's a show. I'm not really. I'm too busy studying grimoires and Enochian magic. But like, I feel some civic responsibility to sort of have my ear to the ground enough to maybe make a few plans for my own life and family and stuff, and also to have some sort of sense of safety, I guess, because these things can turn fast. They always have in history turned fast when they turn. Like right now, we're not allowed to go to stores, but how quick is it to, like,
you can't go to a store?
I can go to a shopping store, but I can't go to a restaurant.
I've been sitting in this convenience store for the past hour and a half.
Yeah, we can go to convenience stores if we're unvaccinated, but we can't go to a restaurant or anything like that.
Only 2 people have looked at me funny.
Yeah.
And they weren't even employees. They were just customers.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, as a celiac, I can't really eat out anyway, and I've never enjoyed going to bars and having drinks. That's not, but I do wish I could perform and play music and work. That would be nice. And even though there's some maybe legal ways that you can do that right now in Canada, that they've created an atmosphere amongst the people that don't want that to happen, right? So there's, as much as there's people standing up to it, there's a lot of people are like, yeah, no, I just can't if you're not vaccinated. Fortunately for me, a lot of people, more and more people are getting educated and like understand that, the antibodies are actually a good thing. So hopefully that'll change, and maybe they might start to acknowledge that. either way, if I'm ever going to travel again, I'll have to get vaccinated. And that's the weird thing. That's the sticking point. It's like, the problem is that they're mandating this even in cases where they know it could lead to the person's death.
I mean,
and they're telling you to do it despite what we went from listen to your doctors, and now we're at the stage in Canada of saying ignore your doctors. They don't know what
and
they're
listen
talking
to the
about.
bureaucrats.
Listen to Mr. Brownface.
Yeah, that's ludicrous.
Really so that people would have. We have clips of like Biden and Trudeau saying a year ago saying we're never going to mandate vaccines or restrict people's activities. They said that. Then they said, "Oh, we are," and it flipped like that from going to listen to your doctors to ignore your doctors and do as you're told. And so it switched so fast. No one seems to even really have noticed it. I mean, obviously, there's tons of mass protests around the world that aren't allowed to be televised, so people have noticed. But in my environment, it seems like you're like, meh, whatever. Things will be okay. And that's terrifying.
It's, we're the frog in the pot, and the water's getting warm.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is one thing I am confident in is that the more time goes by, the more we're getting more stats on, like vaccines are getting banned, like certain ones are getting banned. So it's like, there's nothing wrong with waiting for a bit more information. I guess this counts as promoting hesitancy or some shit like that. But it's like, hey, I'm just a listen to your doctor kind of guy, and that always made sense to me. And I always said, like, as soon as the doctor's like, yeah, you'll be fine, take this one, I probably will, because I'd like to actually be able to leave my province again in my lifetime and have a life and work for a living.
Yeah, but I mean, to make that a requirement, it's just wrong.
Yeah, well, if I have to legally get,
I mean, I know I'm supposed to go to Brazil in April, and I'm just praying that the timelines work out to where this is going to blow over by then. If not, I'll take the stupid test, but I won't take the vaccine.
Yeah, it's a rough one, but yeah, like I said, it's great to see people, standing up for the freedom of choice, at least. Like, that's one of the funniest things. Somehow my body, my choice flipped sides.
Well, I mean,
oh my God.
You know how the left is. There's no logic on the left. It's just emotional. If it happens to fall in line with logic, they'll claim logic. But if it doesn't, well, then you're a racist.
But okay, so since we've touched on all this stuff, and you've always been my conspiracy buddy. Since we've touched on it, let's actually talk about it. You don't think this has actually anything to do with right and left or liberal, conservative, or any of that BS dualism, right? Like,
no, not at all.
That is all a fucking smokescreen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be, because
oh my God, that person's wearing a mask. I'll be damned.
Like,
that
you can't
wearing a mask.
People
Okay,
were. Yeah, that's all right. Recently, we were told that we could cross the border again, but that's actually not true. It's actually not true. You can drive across the Canadian border. So they acted like it was, but you actually have to have paperwork and all these things and pay all this money and all this stuff. But if you can fly. So it's like, these are only laws targeting a certain section of the population.
Well, if you leave from a private airport, you don't have to wear a mask, and you don't have to do all these other things.
You don't need a passport.
That the plebes need to do.
So it's not about right and left. That's an illusion, and we're magicians. And the last thing we should do is get distracted by this fake dualism of right and left. And we need to pierce the veil to what's really going on if we're going to actually stand up to the right thing, and not just play into the manipulation and the
if you were paying attention, you'll notice a lot of this left-right paradigm escalation occurred pretty much after the Wall Street protest. You know, when the elite realized that we were starting to catch on to their game and that it was really about classism and not about racism, that's when they really stoked the fires of the right-left divide.
Yeah, you're right. That actually was the timing of it.
And I mean, wow. It's worked out perfectly for them.
Well, no shit. Yeah. Damn. Like,
because now all the lower classes are against each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Successfully divided the average people on these issues. It's interesting. And I've noticed this because even amongst my social circle in Vancouver, like, we have the full spectrum of opinions. And that's been something we've all sort of noticed we've had to navigate and be sort of respectful of the fact that we get different information and we have radically different opinions on a lot of things. So we sort of either have to talk respecting the other person, or we can't talk at all almost. It's like the respect is more crucial than ever. Otherwise, no conversation will work. So that's an interesting sort of thing to have emphasized.
I think I mentioned this before on the first time I was on the podcast. I lost so many friends in the occult world, you know, over the past 4 or 5 years that I never thought, you know, there could be anything that can kind of like divide us or, you know, and now I can't even imagine a bridge to connect us. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy. It was really shocking for me to notice when I sort of started paying attention to the culture, especially in the States, 4 or 5 years ago, and to notice that a lot of you guys, people who we had all been even in the same groups at times together, won't talk to each other anymore over right-left political issue divides. And I was very surprised to see that, because obviously things have always been a little different here in Canada with our 3-party system. We have less bifurcation. But to see that friends of mine who used to be friends with each other aren't talking because one's a Democrat and one's a Republican was really surprising, because I was surprised to see that amongst initiates who should, in my opinion, seem to know better. We should know better. We don't always succeed in acting better, but we should theoretically.
I mean, well, aren't we supposed to strive for the middle path?
That's what I've been saying since COVID sort of started and the protests and all of that stuff. That was the only thing I really had to say on it. It's not about the black or white. It's about the middle pillar. And, that was, I guess, sort of my intuitive, higher, perception that I felt was the best one to guide me through all of this. And obviously it's easy to get carried off one direction or the other at this time or that time, distracted from that straight and narrow way. But like, how can any good results come about if we're not trying to reconcile and balance these things? I just don't.
Or if we're not even having a dialogue.
Yeah, without dialogues, that's the energy between the two pillars, right? Like, that creates the pillar of consciousness in the middle pillar, right? The consciousness of the middle pillar is the result of the polarities. Just like how in a lot of our temple working, especially in the Golden Dawn, it has less to do with which direction corresponds to what element or planet, because that shifts. It has more to do with what are the forms and the energies invoked and the polarities that the magician creates in the temple through either god forms or invocations or whatever. So we have to elevate our consciousness by allowing that conflict and polarity and conflict of dialogue to occur. I mean, it's just got to happen. And if we can't talk, that's why clearly we're being shut down. Right, we're being discouraged from communicating, and that's why I think podcasts like this, especially with people who hold different views, are so important. Like, that's one of the reasons I've always told people I don't exclude people on this podcast because they believe something I don't believe with. Like, it would be so like, there's podcasts out there where you can tell the hosts are only talking to people they agree with, and it's insanely boring. It's mind-numbing. I've tried to listen to some of them, and there's not much depth of information when you're only talking with people who agree and therefore know the same things you do. Yeah,
I think that's what makes Rogan's podcast so interesting. You know, he'll have anybody on, and he doesn't believe probably 2/3 of the stuff, you know, that his guests believe.
I heard too a teller at the grocery store and a person discussing actually mentioned Joe Rogan when I was in line the other day, and the person said something. The clerk was like, "Oh yeah, everyone tells me I should keep listening to Joe Rogan, but I'm just not into ultra right wing people." And I was just like, I didn't say anything. You know, we're all masked up. I didn't want to butt in. That was not the time and place that was not a teachable moment. But I just sort of was like, oh dear Lord, like the world's gone topsy-turvy when like left wingers are being described as right wingers and
I know. I mean, he's like half a step away from a socialist.
Dude, I voted NDP in our election, and people still think I'm right wing. I literally voted for the Socialist Party. You know why? Because I was like, well, in my district, what's the best thing that we need? What's the main thing we need is what I asked myself. And I have always voted NDP. But I would have voted in another party if I thought it would have done something good this time. But I was like, what's the thing we need in Vancouver? We actually need housing because we've been fucked by China in a seriously devastating way. So that's the only party that was going to give a fuck about the little guy at all. There was no other party that's going to give it. It's not even on their agenda to pretend to care about the little guys. So I was like, I'm going to vote for the only party that even pretends to care. And they do promote affordable housing and all these things. And the other parties just don't believe affordable housing it matters at all. Like we have so many apartment buildings in Vancouver that were built for low income people. And then as soon as they were done, the company was like, surprise, they're actually not for low income people, and like selling them for $500,000 a unit. Or $1.5 million a unit actually is the price, really. It should be $500,000, but it's $1.5 million anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they do these sort of like bait and switches on affordable housing, and it's like, oh, well, what can we do? Nothing.
Well, I tell you, you know, I feel for you there because Austin is the most expensive place to live outside of California.
Dear God, yeah. That's is that a new thing?
You can't even really buy a house here because, I mean, people snatch them up so fast, it's crazy.
Yeah, the lowest price in Vancouver is 10 years ago, the lowest price in Vancouver for a property, I believe, in the Vancouver district was 1.4. And I can only imagine what it is right now. Yeah, it was a big shock when we found out that the cheapest property that existed in Vancouver was 1.4. And there was a big story, headline stories about it and stuff. And that was a while ago. Maybe it wasn't fully 10 years, but it was a while ago. I remember. For any property in the Vancouver district, GVRD.
The 14 acres I'm on is selling for 1.2, but that's 14 acres.
Damn. Yeah, no, I'm talking about like a tenth of an acre. Yeah, like a little piece of land. And I haven't paid attention since then.
That's 1.4 Canadian though, right? So that's what, $100,000 American?
Yeah, so this, I guess, would have been actually around 7 years ago, because it was after I was in the market. We were in the market, and we should have bought, and we didn't. And, like, had we bought something for, like a 300, you could have gotten a 2-3 bedroom apartment downtown for, like, a few $100,000. Had we bought it 2 years later, that property would have been worth millions.
Wow.
Probably the biggest mistake we've made. Honestly, we all make mistakes though. Hey, yeah, me and my sister talked about it the other day, and we're like, damn, that was a mistake. There's no way else to say it, right? Could have done it, didn't do it. That was a mistake. Oops.
Yeah.
Oh well, live and learn. There'll be another chance in some future lifetime, I'm sure.
Maybe when the better timeline converges on this one.
Yeah, or if we reincarnate on a colony like of a planet next to Venus, and they have new space apartments hovering the planet, and we can get in on the ground floor of that. Marry some Venusians and have some Venusian kids.
We talked about conspiracies earlier, and I think the wildest thing I've heard in the past month or so is that the elite vacation on Venus.
Oh my God. Oh, I love the conspiracies about the star bases and the intergalactic wars, man. Those are, if they have good graphics, I'm all in after a toke.
That's still in the unsure column, but for me, but I thought it was interesting.
I mean, yeah. I'm sure we'll know more once the treaties are signed at the South Pole between the reptilians and the Rothschilds, right? Like, once those treaties are signed, they'll probably reveal a bunch of information.
I'm just hopeful that we get down the ball before April. We can go to Brazil and have a good time.
What are you doing in Brazil?
We're doing some temple stuff there. We're facilitating some temple members, going up and dancing and grades and giving a few lectures. Yeah. Brazil is fantastic, man. I love that place. It's like Texas in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I had a really great convo with Marcel Del Debbio, who runs the Project Mayhem podcast out of Brazil. You should talk to him sometime. He's a really cool dude and does a lot of tarot decks and creates a lot of, he did a Kabbalistic board game. He's an architect, and it was really interesting to hear about Brazil. He said Brazil's not for beginners.
No, it's not. But you know what? We don't go to Rio, so we stay out of the big city, and we're in South Brazil, and then for a week, and then we go to Floripa for a week, which is an amazing island off the coast, and God, it's just gorgeous. And because of the dollar, because of the exchange rate, we live like kings for 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. You always forget about that when it comes to South America, though some of the South American economies are sort of on par with ours, right? Like, I heard Chile might be sort of on par with ours.
Yeah,
in a way. I don't know.
I don't know. I wanted to go see the lost cities there, but I hear bad reviews about it.
Bad reviews about the lost cities? They weren't as well made as we were told.
Well, no, it's not the cities itself, but the trek up there. There's like no bathrooms, so there's just so all the way up there, people just kind of like go off to the side of the path and do their thing, and it's just like it's very, very telling, or very noticeable, I should say.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually really glad to hear that, because tell me what you think. Doesn't that sort of, because everyone takes those super annoying, pictures. Everyone's at the same place, doing the same pose, at those sites. It makes me feel better to know that they sort of earned those shots. Those are not some like tourist selfie. No, those motherfuckers earned those selfies at those routes.
Yeah, hardcore.
Yeah, that's cool to know. Every time someone posts one of those pictures now, I'm going to be like, fair play. But yeah, I'd love to see those one day. It would be cool. Yeah, that's great that you guys are able to go down and bring some energy to the.
We were supposed to go down there this year. We were supposed to go to London, Germany, and then Greece, but we couldn't because of COVID. But I think Germany and Greece are still on the docket for next year, but I don't know about London now. So yeah, the OMS is doing great.
Wow, yeah, that's.
I'm very, very, very fortunate, to be in this group, and I kind of feel like you always end up in the group that you're supposed to be in. I've been in so many groups; it's crazy over 26, 27 years, and but every group I've ever been in, I was in at the right time for me to do what I needed to do.
Yeah, and this is definitely the favorite group you've been in ever.
Well, so far, but I mean, only because it's been there's been so much discovery in it. You know what I mean? It feels like we got in on the ground floor almost, even though, the system is hundreds of years old, but still, I mean, it's like, oh man, here's how you do this and here's how you do that. And this is, look, brand new. We just discovered this. We just translated it. And it's like, we were doing everything wrong. Now we know how to do it. It's fantastic. It really is. And we have some great scholars there. I mean, I don't know a lick of French, but I tell you, if you do, get into Martinism, because all documents are in French, and almost none of them would really have been translated.
Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to tell you. That's one of my things about Martinism, as appealing as I find it. Some of my friends are going to hate this, but the problem is I don't like French. Like, I really don't like it. I had to speak it a lot when I was in France the other year, out of necessity, and it was sort of fun. It was fun when I was there. That was okay. That was fun. But as a language itself, and like I know several languages, so if I had wanted to learn French, we had it mandated for 12 years in school, and I would have learned it. It's not because it's not an accident that I didn't learn it. It was intentional. It was highly intentional. So when I think of Martinism, I'm like, that sounds awesome. All the documents are in French. I fucking hate French.
Well, not all of them anymore, because we've translated quite a few.
But they come from French, so they're tainted by the same brutal linguistic sin.
And trust me, every time I have to say the order name, I get laughed at, because I don't do French.
Oh, say it for me.
No, I will not.
Please?
I will not. Sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry at all. I just won't do it.
I do a good bad French. So let me try. It's like ordre martinistes souveraines.
Oh yes, I like that. Souveraines.
Like yeah.
Oh my God, can I use that?
Souveraines. Yeah. I developed this when I was on tour with my Celtic band across Canada, because whenever we were in French-speaking places and going to like drive-thrus for coffee at like in New Brunswick or Quebec or whatever, both my drummer and my guitarist were fluent in French, so they'd always make me order. And I'd be like, I'd be like, parlez-vous anglais? And I'd hear, no, because a lot of them don't speak actually English in those parts. And I'd be like, okay, bonjour, je veux 3 grandes mochas pour moi avec Mohammed. S'il vous plaît, incroyable, les affaires. And you just hear this silence, and then over the speaker you hear like those most weird laughing, and I'd be like, comprends, excellent, and you just hear more laughing. We'd drive up, and they'd be like in stitches serving us our coffees, and often we'd have to reorder because they didn't know what I understand me. But it was good times.
Well, at least in Europe, most Europeans understand English, and you can get by there. In Brazil, man, Portuguese is a hard language, man, because it reads like French, but it does not. I mean, it reads like Spanish, but it doesn't pronounce like Spanish at all. And when you try to speak it, they just look at you like you're the dumbest person in the world.
Which is how they were looking at me in France when I was speaking French, but they looked at me way worse if I spoke English. Like, really? So dismissively. Oh, yeah. The reason I ended up speaking so much French there was just because I was sick and tired of being treated badly, like so disdainfully. I'd be, I'd sit at a cafe. I'd be like, can I get an espresso, please? And he'd be like, why? And I say that like a Quebecois, but he'd be like, oui. And then he'd walk away and sort of give me this look. But if I sat down, I'd be like, if I was like, bonjour, un espresso, s'il vous plaît. And he'd be like, no problem, sir. Plaisir.
Oh,
my pleasure. Yeah, I would say, yes, exactly. He wouldn't want me to keep speaking French necessarily, but they would say like, yes, no problem, plaisir. They'd say plaisir a lot, of course, and that's just a pleasure. Great phrase, actually. I think that's one of my favorite things about France is that when you ask for something, they often say pleasure. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to borrow that.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's not just that I'll do it. It's not because you're paying me or because I'm your friend. It's because it's a pleasure. I like that.
Yeah, we could use more of that.
We could use more of that. Yeah, so that's a sticking point. It's the weirdest sticking point. It's a linguistic sticking point. Like, why would someone, not get into explore a spiritual system because they don't aesthetically like the language? Well, it's a thing. What can I say? I'm a big fan of the Germanic writers and traditions, and I love the Hebrew and Semitic languages and French. French, Spanish, the Romance languages always rub me the wrong way, except for Italian. I liked Italian, and I'd like to learn Italian.
Latin?
Though Latin was okay. In grade school we had to learn German, French, and Latin, so I didn't like French, and I liked German and Latin, and that's probably why I liked Italian.
I'm still fond of Latin.
Yeah, Latin's cool. Latin's cool. It's it is what it is. We're all stuck with it. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, what you gonna do until everything gets translated?
Yeah, I mean,
even then, there's other translations. Some people might say, "Oh, but this word should mean this, and that word should mean that," and it depends on your background, how you translate things. Like I'm working on a translation right now. I found a manuscript. Some of the other guys were working on, and they said, "Oh, this is interesting. It's a group of Martinists that were working with Mesmer, and some of the work that they did together." Yeah, and so I was like, "Oh, really? I'm interested in that because that's kind of like channeling almost." And so I picked it up and I'm translating it. It'll probably be the next book that I come out with.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What else can you say about the Martinists who worked with Mesmer? Franz Mesmer, right?
It was. I did not realize how influential Mesmer was, in France. And it was just like, wow, this cat, he, not only did he work with a lot of Martinists, but I mean, he had a really great influence on the Freemasons at the time.
Really?
I mean, he was a rock star, dude.
Well, yeah, no, I'm aware of how downplayed he is, in history, but I had no idea about the deep connections to Martinism and Freemasonry.
Yeah, the only thing about it is the manuscript. It's not that big. It's not it describes their workings, and it's a very interesting read. It's just not. There's not a lot of meat on the bone. But I think it's just going to be a fun little project I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great one. I wonder
that it's in French.
Why. What do you think? Do you think there might have been something in Mesmer's teachings that they specifically wanted to suppress? Because
no, honestly, I think it was because of Blavatsky that fucking channeling really got ignored.
When you mentioned what happened to channeling earlier, the first thing actually I held back coughing and saying Blavatsky, because she really did fuck that shit up for everybody.
She ruined it. She ruined that for all the occult schools.
Yeah. Well, we can see the effect that her shenanigans had on the Golden Dawn members and their views of the spiritual guides of the order, or secret chiefs, right? Because at first they felt they were necessary, so they almost had to fabricate them. And then when Lux e Tenebris comes along in Paris and gives Mathers the Z-Docs, which clearly those are inspired documents, and we can see that clearly because Mathers never wrote anything as good as them before or after at all, even close. His other works appear bumbling compared to the exquisite elegance of the Z-Docs and those formulas that have really kept the tradition together in a major way. Because no one can really look at them and the exordium and be like, meh. They're fascinating. It really does look like transmitted information from Raphael.
And they work.
They work. I mean, I've seen it work in every way imaginable. I've seen it work. I've seen it work astrally. I've seen it work physically. I've seen it work when the person's not working it. I've seen the person work when the person is working it. I mean, great success, huge success when they're actually doing the work. But even when they're not, I've seen it work. I've seen it destroy their lives. You know what I mean? Just because they're not doing the work. I mean, think of it what you will, but that shit works. Yeah, formula of the magic of light for all the people and purists and grimoires who want to discount the GD these days. It's kind of absurd because imagine, like, if like Dr. Page is correct in saying that these grimoires were used to make contact, the techniques were used to make contact, and then develop relationships and further teachings with spirits there, which is why, each magician would come up with another grimoire, because they'd used what they had before them to communicate and connect. Then they would get new stuff, create a new grimoire, and this was how things sort of leapfrogged down to us, with the basic, techniques of magic remain the same, but the little pieces here and there that each magician or adept would bring to the world are fascinating puzzle pieces that fill in the full picture. And yet, so that, and the Golden Dawn is a result of people from, the Lodge Masonic world plus the magical world doing that exact process of interpretation, exploration, and creation to create the GD system. So the agenda of any grimoirist is ultimately perhaps could be to create something similar like the GD, or something new, something that it hadn't come through before, whether it's a formula or a ritual or an initiation or a whole order. So for people now to go back to those grimoires and deny the fruits of the other laborers of those same texts is it's contradictory.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I mean, if you do something the way it was done before, and it's revealed to you an easier way of doing it, or a more modern way of doing it, that makes it, and it still works, then do that and share that, because somebody will take that and then they'll discover an easier way that you discovered. And that's how the tradition keeps living.
Right. Like the GD initiations aren't just another form of Masonic initiation. They have magical formula in them to use the magic, specifically you see this in the opening of the watchtowers, and the magical evocation of those spiritual creatures in those watchtowers to operate within the sphere of sensation of the initiate. That's a magical operation. And that's a very new magical operation. And it's a fusion of magic and spirituality that probably hadn't been seen in quite that way ever before. And to reject it out of hand because it's new is against the whole agenda of the grimoire magicians in the first place.
And I think what can attest to it being a magical system is you can tinker with it and change it around almost dramatically and still get results.
Exactly. That's a really good point, actually, that is the sign of a magical system. Yeah.
So, I think we've got a pretty decent talk, and I'm kind of starting to get a little stiff here.
Yeah, you're sitting in a car, dude. Yeah. Well, we'll keep talking. Talk soon off air, and for people to know.
Thank you for having me on. And, my book should be released around the 25th. You can find it on Amazon. There'll be a Kindle edition as well for like 99 cents.
It's already up there, folks, for a buck and change in Canada as a Kindle edition. And
called Hacking the Human Experience, 30-Day Reprogramming Handbook. And I think it's for everyone. It's not just for occultists. It's not just for people on the path. It is for everyone. And if you want to change some bad habits or maybe some flawed personality traits, this book will really help you, I think.
Well, it's coming from an adept of multiple reputable and rigorous systems. And I think that's what people should realize. This is not someone gathering cool looking shiny objects together and putting them. This is clearly the work of an adept who has thought out his entire spiritual journey and pinpointed the key things and communicated them in the best way that he thinks they would be of value to in other depths or total muggles, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and the texts I shared are definitely ones that have proven track record of helping people, without a doubt.
Yeah. Jeff, pleasure, my friend.
RC, I love you, man.
Love you too, bro.
I can't wait to see you.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I'm sure we'll talk very soon.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, and talk soon.
Diving deep into the practices and reality tunnels of the esoteric and the occult, check out Praxis Behind the Obscure podcast, where I interview practicing occultists, do book reviews, and much more. Check us out on YouTube, Red Circle, and many other podcast platforms.